Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
I'm getting texts from Pete Rollins, but we can't check those until after the
Silly Pete.
talk. Why would he be watching and texting me at the same time? That's so weird. Maybe he has a set design idea. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh. Everybody's had a good week, interesting week. Good morning, Roberta. That's someone listening online for folks who are curious. I'm just seeing people come up. So, lucky number 13.
Viewer number 13.
Good morning from Alabama. Good morning, Alabama. Good to see you. Glad you're here.
If you can name, first one to name the artist this next track's gonna win free access to all of our episodes.
Who played the bass on...
Yeah.
Who played the bass on the Doors? Trick question. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Revolution Church. World is still insane in 2021, believe it or not. Oh, goodness. Goodness
Gracious.
Good morning, Bob. Bob is here.
Hey, Zoe. Missed you too. So says they missed us.
Well, I had a long week with the kiddos, and lots of fun. Good weather here in the Seattle area.
It was really nice weather.
So we were able to go play at the parks, which is nice. And, we did all sorts of fun stuff. We built a wrestling ring in the park. My son thought that if he flushed the toilets in the park toilet thing that he was blowing the building up. So he kept saying he had to go blow the building up and walk into the bathroom, which I thought was a little bit strange.
Yeah, you might want to nip that behavior in the bud.
Yeah.
Not that, yeah.
Yeah, and playing in the public bathroom, not a good thing.
Yeah.
Not a good dad move for me. So here we are, and on the verge of all sorts of insanity and good things, hopefully.
Yes.
Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, which I'm very excited about. And Friday was Dr. King's birthday. And as you know, he's always been a huge inspiration for me and encouraged my work. Brilliant man who I think, had he made the decision to be anything else, he would have been that. Or he could have been a great philosopher. Not that he wasn't a philosopher, but I think if he had gone into philosophy, he would have been probably one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century. Brilliant man, complex man. You know, one of the things about Dr. King is he has such complexity to him. And also contradictions, as we all do. And I love that about Dr. King. What I find interesting is often people want to talk about like King being a Marxist or King, they're like the real King, the shocking King, and it's funny to me is like I often share quotes about him about loving your enemies and things like that, and people are like, oh, that's the, kind of the soft King, and I'm like, it might seem like the soft King, but like in this day and age when in the day and age that he was living in, and now looking at what we're in, when we are encouraged by someone to treat our enemies in a particular way that with love, it's a huge challenge. And so I like to push back on people like, well, actually, if you try what he's saying here, it's not soft. It might sound soft and lovey-dovey, but if you try this and put this in action, it's very tough stuff. And one of the things I loved about Dr. King is that as much as he did talk about not letting anybody drag you down enough to hate them, and not scapegoating your enemies, he also believed in accountability for his enemies. And he also wasn't so sentimental that he believed that, like, well, if they just hear my message about love, they won't kill me. You know, he knew the importance that laws needed to be changed to protect his life, his brothers and sisters' lives, his children's lives. And at the end of his career, you know, he was defending the poor, you know, all the poor, you know, and I always thought that was just extremely amazing to me, that Dr. King just always went further and further and further to recognize those who were left out, and how to be a constructive way, how to deal with your enemies by showing them love, but also exposing their contradictions and exposing their misinformation, you know, like by saying, we have to put this out there. You know, they would be like, you're creating tension. And he goes, no, I'm just exposing tension that's already there.
Right.
You know, so I think when we think about, you know, Dr. King tomorrow, and I think about Dr. King a lot. I have one of his quotes hanging up here on my wall. I think it's, you know, yeah, I mean, what he said about the Vietnam War, he was anti-war. You know, all these amazing things is that, you know, realize that we're talking about a complex figure. You know, Dr. King is a complex man, and not a perfect man, but a complex man who really was capable of knowing how to move within the system, and not become the system so much that the FBI thought he was one of the most dangerous humans alive, because he loved people, but he also saw the need to confront people who were hurting others, and he saw the need to have laws to protect others. So what an amazing human being, and I'm really excited that there's a Dr. King Day. You know, I mean, that people stop to think about it, and I just don't. You know, I don't take any of his quotes because he was such a complex man. I just, you know, you have to take all those quotes and put them together. A quote just. Person doesn't just live in a quote or just a few quotes. You know, you have to take them all together, and there's some amazing quotes out there. I saw a lot of people on Friday digging really deep and finding some really amazing ones, and trying to, you know, create a solid picture of the whole man, you know. And there's tough truths there, and he spoke tough truths in love, and I really aspire to do that. I feel like Dr. King showed me how to love and how to show better compassion towards people in my life, and also how to be more constructive with that compassion and not just be like, I love you, see you later, keep killing people. You know what I mean? I love you, and this has got to stop, and this is why.
Right.
But know that, you know, you're not. I'm still not going to let you be the enemy. I'm going to let that information be the enemy, but I am going to confront it. So I think that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And complex. So there you go. There's my riffing on Dr. King this morning. Bernice King is on Twitter. If you don't follow her. She's pretty great. She's, you know, I've actually tweeted her before, and she's gotten back to me. I mean, it's like, bam, you know, pretty amazing woman. And Coretta Scott. I mean, we wouldn't have Martin Luther King if it wasn't King Day, if it wasn't for Coretta Scott King, you know. So, I mean, it's just, you know, and all the other people who are involved. So, anyhow, we're in Galatians 3. I've been thinking a lot about Galatians 3, obviously, but also a lot going on in the country, and I think, you know, we'll probably end up talking about some of that stuff as we go through Galatians 3 today. So I'm not going to just riff on everything that's happening. I mean, obviously Wednesday we have the inauguration, and a lot of things are going on, and I'm honestly trying not to get my news off social media. I'm really trying to not. There's so much misinformation; it makes me crazy. So we're in the Bible. Be careful, because it's a suspect device.
Whoa!
Oh,
Hey, that's pretty cool, man.
yeah, pretty cool.
What you got there, the Anarchist Cookbook?
I did, yeah. Galatians 3. So Paul has just talked about confronting Peter because Peter was afraid to sit with Gentiles or Greek people because he was afraid of what James's guys would think if he was sitting with non-Jewish Christians. And Paul called him out on it, and we went through that, and it's really a highlight. And I usually at the end of the Galatians talks, the last one, I usually just go through my highlights, and that's definitely in there. Through Galatians highlights, not my own. So, again, this is a rebuke letter, and the complexity and beauty of this book is that it's a book about grace that teaches us so much about grace, and I think it's probably the best book on grace in the New Testament. Martin Luther, the reformer, would agree. And it's a letter that is a rebuke letter. And I mean, could you imagine, you're writing like a letter to like rebuke somebody and tell them to get their life together or whatever, and it's also one of the most graceful books you've ever written. Once again, call back to Dr. King. He knew it. He had it. He had that. So 3 starts with, pretty harsh, "You foolish Galatians!" ! "Who has bewitched you? It was before your eyes that Jesus Christ was publicly exhibited as crucified. The only thing I want to learn from you is this. Did you receive the Spirit by doing the works of the law or by believing what you heard? Are you so foolish?" I mean, he's pretty harsh here. "Having started with the Spirit, are you now ending it with the flesh? Did you experience so much for nothing? If it really was for nothing, well then, does God supply you with the Spirit and work miracles amongst you by you doing the works of the law or by you believing what you heard?" Great thing here is like back to the religion of Christianity is the radical thing is he's saying, you can't petition God with, you can pray, but God doesn't do that because you're praying, or God doesn't do that because you didn't do a certain amount of sins, or because you went to church every Sunday, or you read this many books, or you voted for a particular political party, because you're a conservative, or because you're a Republican, or because you're, super right or super left. None of that. It was saying, why does God work? Not because of what we do, but because of what you believed. This is why God works miracles among you. Now, honestly, I have a hard time with miracles because I've seen there's times I wish God showed up and didn't show up. But that's here nor there. I do see a comment from our buddy Bob, good old friend Bob, saying, it was much harder. He was much harsher. Paul, the apostle, was much harsher in the original Greek. And I believe it. He was really upset. And then teaching you about grace at the same time. It's like, whoa, are you from Minnesota, dude? I don't get it. A passive-aggressive joke. Also would like to thank Fred Knowlton for this morning's McDonald's.
Me too. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks for your sponsorship, Fred. Or we should just put Fred Knowlton on the cups rather than McDonald's.
Yeah.
So anyway, just as... So we're looking at this and seeing what Christ does. Now, does that mean we don't do good things? Of course not. I mean, we just talked about Dr. King. I mean, Dr. King made an exceptional change in this world. But I think what King understood is that when we try to love God, we really love our neighbor. We really love the other.
Yep.
And so I don't think he was in this thing of like, I feel like a lot of evangelical preachers who have these really big churches and really big buildings are often caught in this idea that they're doing it for God. Like they want to please God. They want to make God happy. So they have to do great things in the name of God. And sometimes that gets confused. And you can see that when people start to fall to the wayside. And it's almost like they were just doing this direct messaging with God of like, oh, look, God, I've got this great building and I've got thousands of people here. And it's almost like the people become the second thought. And I think what Paul sees, I think what Dr. King sees is that how do I express my love is loving others, is by reaching out to others. So I think that's an important thing to see here, is how that's expressed. But the cool thing, once again, I'm just going to come back about this faith, is that it's not based on those things. You know, God has no favorites. So God doesn't go like, well, you know, King is my guy, but, you know, Malcolm X, you know, I don't know. No, he's like, I love all these people equally. I don't work amongst them because of the great things they do or the bad things they do. You know, we want to have these in our life. We want to have all these categories, and we're very good at it. I mean, especially with social media now. Now we know who's in and who's out, and who to cancel and not based on what tribe we're involved in.
Right.
But that's God's above that, and above these things. And we're going to get into that in a moment, to the point where Paul is asking us to take down our dividers. Goes on to say, just as Abraham believed God and was reckoned to him as righteous, so you're descendants of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, declared in the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, all the Gentiles shall be blessed as you. For reasons, those who believe are blessed with Abraham who believes. And if you know about Abraham, Abraham had faith before the law, before there was the law. Grace existed before the law. For all who rely on the works of the law are under a curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone who does not observe and obey all things written in the book of the law. Now it is evidence that no one is justified before God by the law. For the one who righteous will live by faith. But the law does not rest on faith. On the contrary, whoever does the works of the law will live by them. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. And this is also really why people mocked Christ and Christianity, is because they were like, you know, a cursed God. But that's what we serve, is a cursed, humiliated God. Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. In order that Christ Jesus, the blessing of Abraham, might come for the Gentiles, so that we might receive the promise of the Scriptures through faith. So, you know, Paul is just trying to basically say, like, listen, guys, you want the Gentiles, you want to control the Gentiles through guilt, through religious law, and through things like this. And what I'm trying to tell you is that this law is no longer there. And people want to say the law is there because Christ came to fulfill the law, and then you can argue about what that meant all day long. But I think Paul in this book here is making it clear is that it meant the law was fulfilled, it was done, it was over, and we don't have to live by it. Now, of course, as humans, we create new laws and new ideas and new things of saying, well, this is what really means if you love a particular way, if you think a particular way. No room for contradiction, which is sad because humanity is contradiction. Often no room for suffering, which is sad because life is suffering.
Yep.
So the fact is we created another religion, another Christianity that doesn't even recognize Christianity. I can't even recognize as Christianity. I thought it was Christianity growing up until I started reading Paul's writings and then going back to Jesus and understanding what Jesus said, and then really, you know, hashing it out and studying and doing the things that I was told as a good Christian did, but then I found out things that people said wasn't Christian enough. I don't know. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me about it.
Woo! That's exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
So this is the idea: is grace is transformed. I received a tweet yesterday from someone who said that they were listening to one of the talks about grace, and that they thought one of the things that grace was doing was chipping away at some of their own hurts and their own wounds that had been made by others. And that's completely correct. I mean, that's what grace does. When you accept, you're accepted, and then you start to see that others are accepted. There's some healing starts to take place. Now, I'm not saying it was magical for me. I had to go to therapy and counseling and all sorts of different things to work on out and fail and fall on my face a million times to get to the point where I'm accepting myself for who I am, not just through grace, but just as just a human being, you know, and not taking every little negative thing as truth. But I think, you know, grace is really transformative, and I could try to explain it to you, but what I want to just really, I'm just going to say, and this is creepy, so don't do it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Trust me. You don't have to trust me, but I feel that grace does transform our lives in a really beautiful way. And if you're anything like me, you'll become obsessed with it. So for me, I was 20, found out about this thing, grace. I'm 45 now and can't stop talking about it at 45. I read philosophy, I read theology, and all it does is give me new ways to think about grace. So it's like I'm constantly just working out this concept of grace. It's this beautiful thing that never arrives. I never get to the place where I completely understand it. And then now lately I've been trying to move out of my faith and out of spirituality and see what it looks like outside of religion, and see what it looks like as a human way of living and how we can all share this together. So it's pretty amazing grace. I'm gonna.
That'd be a good song title.
Yeah, I think so. Well, maybe we'll write something out. Save an awesome guy like me, you know.
Something like that.
Something like
Once
that.
was lost, now I'm full. I was hungry, now I'm full. No.
That's So we're going to go on a little bit more to 15. Galatians 3 is long, so I'm always, when I do Galatians 3, I'm like, am I gonna read the whole thing or not? And I should probably make that decision before I come here, but
right.
I have 2 children that are like little tornadoes. If I turn this camera around, you'd be like, what happened? The president would be like, we have an emergency in Seattle. So here we go. Brothers and sisters, I give an example from this daily life. Once a person's will, like, you know, your will that you write before you die, has been ratified, no one adds to it or annuls it. Now, the promises that were made to Abraham and his offspring, it does not say, and to offspring as many, but it says, and to your offspring. This is one person who, okay, that is through one person who is Christ. I like the theology that we're seeing right now, that's Paul's doing, and some even would say acrobatics. But I like what he's doing here. But as to say, as to your offspring, that is one person who is Christ. My point is this: the law which came 430 years later does not annul a covenant previously ratified by God so as to nullify the promise. For if the inheritance comes from the law, it no longer comes from the promise, but God granted it to Abraham through the promise. So, you know, you have a will, you write out the will, you die, you know, my cousin doesn't come along and be like, well, I'm Jay's cousin, so we're going to change the will, and this is going to be changed. No, that's what it is. That is the promise. That was the promise I made to those I loved and cared about, and that's fulfilled because of my will, and that does not change. And so he's saying the grace came 450 years-ish, 430 years before the law, and that promise was always there. That promise of grace was always in this faith. So he's also making it clear to his brother and his Jewish brothers and sisters, you know, going back to the scriptures and saying, here it is in the scriptures. So if you need to see it, I know you're tearing me apart with the scriptures. Well, I can use the scriptures too. And so why don't you take a look at the scriptures? I'll show you how I see that grace has always been there. Because if this is a hard thing for you, here it is. You know, he's proving it. He's doing his best to prove his case. I mean, that's really what Paul is doing. He's putting his case of grace and forgiveness out there. 19 says, why then the law? It was added because of transgressions until the offspring would come to whom the promise had been made. And it was ordered through the angels by a mediator. Now, a mediator involves one involves more than one party, but God is one. In the law, then opposed to the promise of, is the law then opposed to the promise of God? Certainly not, Paul says, for the law has been given that we could make it alive. The righteous would be indeed come through the law, but the Scripture has imprisoned all things under the power of sin, so that what was promised through faith in Jesus Christ, it might be given to those who believe. So Paul is coming in and he's saying, all right, the Scriptures, things have changed. The law was for a time being, and now this is the new thing. I mean, he is literally coming and saying something completely brand new. So it's often when we hear people say something new in Christianity, we go, where is it? I need proof text. It's like a law book. Like, well, where in the book does it say that? Verse number, please. And Paul is saying, no, that this is a promise. And I think that promise is continuously built on the idea of grace and inclusion is continuously something that was built on in the New Testament, and we continue to build on now as we understand it more and research it more and think about it more and have even more knowledge and wisdom given to us through, historians and archaeologists and scientists and things like that we're able to add to this. I don't think it's something that was like, you guys can't talk anymore about this or speculate. And you go, well, how do I speculate? Well, I think, and not become a heretic. I think a wise way through that is maybe like, is it covered by love God with all your heart and loving your neighbor as yourself? Is it covered by, can you see it through the lenses of Christ? Can you even see it through some of the lenses of Paul? And now, not all Paul is Paul, so you have to kind of do some deciding there. But, these are good things to look at and say, like, okay, I don't think you have to law book it, but I think those are good glasses to put on. And one of the things that Pete Rollins told me about studying philosophy is one of the important things about doing it is making yourself so familiar with the philosopher that you begin to think like the philosopher. When you go into that train of thought, you start to try to think as they would think. And I think that's probably a good way to look at the Bible. Is, can we think like Can we think like Christ? What would Jesus do? Bracelets. Can we think? What would Paul think? Can we think like the authors here and dissect it? I know that seems crazy, but it's just something to see. It's just something to think about. Now, before faith came, we were imprisoned. Did I read this? Guarded under the law until faith was revealed.
The scripture.
I didn't read. Yeah, I didn't read 23.
That part, though.
Therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came, so that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to this disciplinarian. And I think a part of this is why people are kicking back and why the Judaizers are kicking back on this is the fact that they're losing a bit of their pull. They're losing some of their power. And what we've seen in this country is that people like power and people think that's important. And so they're losing some of their, their pull. Some of their like, oh, well, this is the law says, so you need to do this, and with their authority. And I don't know how many people I grew up in the church where these pastors had this passion about having authority. Well, I'm the man of God, and this is my authority, so we're going to get together, and we're going to make a decision, and then you're going to get kicked out, and da-da-da. And it was as like they were binding it as it was bound in heaven. You know what I mean? Like they were binding and loosing what they wanted to, And I think that's a cool concept. Rob Bell wrote some cool stuff about it. But what I'm saying is that, when you start taking away the law, it gets a little bit harder to be like, oh, yeah, it's grace. Well, I'm under, that it becomes a slippery slope that a lot of people worry it will be. And I'm obviously an example of the slippery slope that grace is, the whole Revolution Church is. But now that faith has come, we are no longer subjects to the disciplinarian. For in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith, and many of you were baptized into Christ, have clothed yourselves with Christ. Now, this next part, for the past couple years, has been one of the parts that I've struggled. I don't struggle with. I like it. I think it's brilliant. Pete Rollins wrote a great thing about Galatians 3:29 in his his book, The Insurrection. It's wrote some pretty amazing stuff about it there, and if you've heard him speak, you've probably heard him mention it, because he's kind of a one-trick pony. I believe that also Zizek has written some things about it as well. This is a very interesting thing, and I think in this time, with identity being seeming so important, it becomes something that interesting to me. That years earlier, it was something that I felt more of a conservative struggle with when I would kind of look at it as in a way of denominations and things like that. But now it's something that more of my progressive friends are like, oh, this is tough because, this is important. And so I don't think this is going to erase your identity. But I think it's important to look at, and I think it's important to think about, and it is not my job to convince you. I just want you to think about it and think well about it and wrestle with it. And if you have a better idea, which you probably do, you can put it in the Q&A here for the service, or you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Because Facebook is like, I'm on there the least, is my Facebook one. But I'm trying. Mm-hmm. It's just tough.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Baby steps. So here we go. Galatians 3:29. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all are one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. Now, the second part, everybody thinks, well, then I've got to say the special prayer, or I got to do the special thing, and I have to become a Christian, and I have to accept Jesus as my Savior in order to not be covered. So I'm going to challenge that idea and use examples that Christ has shown us in the past of where he humanized people constantly. When he went to Matthew's house, everybody goes, why is he eating with tax collectors? Why is he eating with such scum? Why does he associate with these people? And so what does Jesus do? He's like, you're right. No, he doesn't do that. He says, come work for me, Matthew. And what happens to Matthew is no longer a tax collector to him. Matthew is a friend and a disciple and a human being. And so he humanizes what the world sees outside as something negative. He humanizes Matthew, and Matthew comes and walks with him. And what Jesus does with the woman caught at the well. I even think there's one point where the Samaritan woman where Jesus is like, well, why would I give unholy to the dogs, what's holy to the dogs? And she goes, well, even dogs get crumb from the tables. I think she turned around and humanized Jesus and brought Jesus back down to a human level. And I really believe that. I think it's very interesting. I've had people argue with me that Jesus was just trying to make, riff with her so everyone would see what was going on and just make a good example. No. Jesus was repenting, okay? Jesus was going, oh, no, you're right. But I don't know if she was bringing Jesus back to a human level or actually bringing Jesus up to the level of Messiah, to a spiritual level, to seeing beyond that. It could be either way, really, if you think about it. But Christ seemed to humanize others. Now, what is Paul doing here is he is trying to humanize people. Now, obviously, he's talking to people who are in authority. So when he's talking and saying there's neither Jew nor Greek, he's trying to say, hey, my Jewish brothers and sisters who are trying to make these Greeks get circumcised and do these certain things, I need you to come down and realize you're one with them. Mm-hmm. That we are one, that we are more than society's
boxes,
categories. Yeah, why does everybody have to be something? Why do we have to be categorized? And we all want to be kind of categorized. Mm-hmm. I still think about that. Green Day song has been stuck in my head every time I speak now. It's, I want to be the minority. It's like everybody's like, because you want to say something, you want to fight for something. But Paul is trying to bring the field, and I always felt that that's what King was doing. I mean, when I hear Dr. King, you know, I mean, yeah, he wanted reparations, and I think I agree with that. I think it's extremely difficult to do, but I think it's worthy. He wanted certain things like that, but he wasn't trying to say we want this something special beyond that. What he's saying is we just want what we're deserved. You know, we just want what we weren't given and what everybody else was given. You know, everybody else was given land and homes and things like that. And we were like, oh, you're free. Good luck. Eat well. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, well, what about my land? Oh, no land for you. Just keep, you know, enjoy your life now that you don't have anywhere to work or live. But, you know, good luck with that.
You'll figure it out.
So I think that it's very clear why Dr. King believed in reparations. But it's also clear that what we also believe that, you know, he said, I dream that a day will come where my sons and daughters are judged by their
not by this color of their skin, but
by their character.
Yeah.
You know, and he was saying we want to be humans to one another. My dream is that one day humanity will be got together. I think of John Lennon's song, you may say, I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. You know, because it's like, maybe one day you'll join us and the world will be as one. You know, that idea of peace does seem a little, I don't know about that. But this idea that we're still part of our identities. You know, when he said there's neither Jew nor Greek, actually, it wasn't that the Greek people stopped being Greek. Jewish people didn't stop being Jewish. He wasn't even telling the Jewish people that they had to stop practicing the law.
Right.
What he was saying is you have to stop making others do what you want them to do. You can't force these people to do something. You know, you're not even under that. It's okay if you do that, but you've got to know that it has nothing to do with your faith. It has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, it's not based on that. So, you know, so people didn't stop being male and female at the time. You know what I mean? People didn't stop being slave or free. You know, I mean, a lot of people are like, why didn't Paul free the slaves? But in a way, what he was doing was he was building the groundwork to these slave owners, to saying, these folks are just like you. You know, and probably making the slaves being like, yeah, I mean, pretty much your whole wealth is built off us anyway. So we are really a community. We are one. And I mean, what do you think this type of message does to someone who owns slaves? You know, when Paul says, no, you're one with them. They're your brothers and sisters. Right. You know, all of a sudden you see someone as property, and the next minute you see them as your brother and sister, and you see them as a human being, you know. And Paul's saying something so important about there's neither male nor female. You know, the hierarchy, the male hierarchy in this time was insane. Like, you weren't even recognized. You know what I mean? They thought everything had to do with the man. Like, oh, the semen is the only reason you have a child because that's the life force. I mean, you know, just everything was barbaric. And he's saying, you know, women are no different than men. We're all equal. Now, the thing is, as often in rights groups, we get to the point where we go like, oh, we need this, or we need that, or we need this, we need that, and it starts to get, and so people get confused, you know. And sometimes I think we do ourselves a disservice, or sometimes I hear woke people say stuff that I'm like, oh, that actually sounded a little bit racist, what you just said, you know. And I hear racists say things that actually sound racist too. But it's like, you know, there comes this confusion and these blurred lines because people don't know, you know, they're so focused on the identity of the person that, you know, it becomes these blurred lines. Yeah, I saw a comedian do this thing on you know, we had two different characters, and one character was a racist person, and then one person was a super woke person, and they were both like comparing their belief systems together, and it was just funny, like if you reword certain things, how you're like, oh, that might be actually racist, or oh, you know, so you kind of get this thing. Anyway, I digress. Really, I digress. I get it. This is a sensitive subject. But there's something beautiful in the recognizing one another's humanity. You know,
yes.
When I see my brothers and sisters who have been treated unfairly over time, I realize that there needs to be amends. But when I'm able to love those who hurt my brothers and sisters as well, I realize there doesn't need to be revenge. And so I think that's what, for me, when I think about Dr. King, what Dr. King brought to me was this idea is that there needs to be amends, there needs to be laws changed, but there doesn't need to be revenge. Who am I thinking about? I'm thinking about one of the presidents. Name escapes me right now.
Recent president?
No, he was imprisoned in Africa. And ended up becoming a president there. Nelson Mandela.
I thought you were an American.
No. And I think about Nelson Mandela. And when he came into power, people wanted to strip the soccer team of their soccer colors. People wanted to fire all the people in the office and change everything. You know, and Nelson Mandela did not get revenge. Nelson Mandela actually kept some of the people. And he worked with some of the people. And what he was doing was he was working to lead them to repentance. So when we recognize one another's humanity, a natural type of repentance, and now all repentance is a change of mind, a change of thought, a change of working ways. When we recognize the humanity of others, something comes alive. I think that's what happened in the civil rights movement. It wasn't the police who were beating civil rights protesters that recognized them as humans, but when the media cameras hit, it was the people sitting down for their dinner, watching television, seeing African Americans, our black brothers and sisters, being beat and seeing their children beat and their mothers and them beat and go, I recognize their humanity. Mm-hmm. This is wrong. Right. This is inhumane. And I'm recognizing that what people are doing is inhuman to them. And this needs to be changed and this needs to be confronted. Yep. But that came through a recognition of one another's humanity. And that's where empathy starts to come into place. When I otherize somebody, it's easy for me not to empathize with them. Well, they're this, and they do this, and I don't do that, and I don't look like that, and I didn't grow up that way. So, why are they doing this? I don't understand. Mm-hmm. But when I realize that we're all humans going through this insane experience called life, crazy thing called life, right? Then I go, oh, God, everybody deserves, that's why I believe in Medicare for all. Everybody deserves to be able to go to the damn doctor. I don't know why that's such a crazy thing, When I see my kids, when I see other people's kids, it's like when I see a child suffering, I automatically think of my kids because I'm going through this human experience of raising children and I know what they're like. And my empathy is even stronger because I'm experiencing it. And I see this humanity in other people's children, and they don't have to be white children. You know what I mean? They don't have to be any type of children. They don't have to be in a progressive house or a conservative. When I see children, I think about what is best for these children. And when we recognize one another's humanity, there's we will scapegoat less.
Yes.
We don't blame it on the other. If we could just get rid of the other, everything would be okay. And I think that's the awful thing. And then when we see the others do radical things, we judge them harshly, call them names, and refuse to humanize them. And that becomes very easy to do.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be like, well, those are just a bunch of horrible people who believe horrible things, and I would never do that. But to be honest with you, we're all one political move or shift away from following into similar ways. I know because I talk to a lot of you. I talk to a lot of people. I know we all have different passions, but I could never do that. But you'd be surprised what you can do given the right situation. Sometimes when the shoe's on the other foot. So when we try to empathize with the other, we don't otherize them, we humanize them. So when we humanize them, things become different. So when you humanize people who are fighting for rights, things become different. When you humanize people who, I will even say breaking into the Capitol, when you humanize them, and see that there's humans suffering with certain thoughts and certain ideas that may be complete misinformation, but when you humanize them, you don't become so angry and like, oh, they all deserve to burn in hell and go, and they all should have been shot and killed and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. Why are we shooting these people? We're trying to keep other people, we're trying to keep our African-American brothers and sisters safe. Mm-hmm. Shooting more white people is not going to help it. Yeah. You know, I mean, like we got to figure out a way where we see the humanity within one another. Now, should people have to pay the price for the things they do? Yes, that's how the world works. Mm. You know, they've broken laws, they've done things. They will be probably held very accountable to those laws. Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, honestly, nothing surprises me more if they aren't. But the thought is how do we humanize the other? Now, you might say, Jay, this isn't for me. And I'd say that's great. But what I would say is that's okay if it's not for you, if it pisses you off, if it makes you angry. That's okay. That's okay. But maybe this religion isn't for you. You know, maybe this call isn't for you. You know, I can't tell anybody how to live or how they should live. What I can do is focus on things. You know, and share ideas and thoughts with you and say, this is what's going on in my process because I'm reading these books, I'm thinking these thoughts, I've dedicated my life to this work, so here's what I have for you. Yep. You know? Mm-hmm. Share a quick Mandela story real quick that I read, and I really hope it's true. So Nelson Mandela was sitting down for dinner. And at a restaurant. And he saw a man come in. And he said, would you please ask that man to come to our table and eat with us? And so his friends, his assistants got up and said, you know, Mr. Mandela would like you to join us for dinner. And so they sat and ate dinner. And so the whole time this man looked very nervous, could barely eat his soup. It looked like he was sick. And, you know, and Mandela talked to him a little bit. And they had a conversation. He finished his food and got up and left. And some of his people said, do you think that man was sick? What was wrong with that man? He seemed very nervous. And Nelson Mandela said, well, that was my prison guard. Wow. And when I was in prison for all those years, and he used to beat me when he would get bored. And there would be times where I would beg him for water. And he would beat me and then piss in my mouth. And he's like, so that's what you're seeing is that it was a fear of retaliation. Mm. And what Nelson Mandela showed him is that I'm not going to return the favor. And if I could teach you one lesson, if I could beg people in the woke community, in the conservative community, in the liberal community, in the very left Marxist community, all of you, is do not return the bad news. Do not return the favor of judgment. Do not return the favor of othering the other. Don't other the ones who've othered us. No. I know it's hard, and it's tough, and it's a struggle, and that's when those scriptures that come that say, die to yourself, die to your flesh, do all these type of things, take up your own cross. That's when those verses kind of hit the road really, really tough, you know? And so... Anyway, I see people saying Mandela is a complicated character. You know, just for reference for a lot of you who are listening, if you're interested in anyone I'm talking about, they are all complicated characters. They all have contradictions, and none of them are perfect. They are all haphazardly human. So there you go. You can take that and use that a little bit, and go for that. So when I talk about somebody, I don't, you know, use a positive example. It doesn't mean I don't think that they didn't do shitty things or they didn't hurt other people. Right. If I talk about a politician, you know, obviously I've said some great politicians who sent missiles and blown up buses and killed little children. That bothers me. Mm-hmm. But so no one was innocent. I mean, that's why we're talking about King as being a complicated character. You know, his marriage was not perfect. His coping mechanisms weren't great, but he still changed the world we live in and is still inspiring us to be changed people. But the fact is when we look at those things, we can just go like, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that. Mm. Now we can go like, you know, I'm a human being and I might not have done that, but I have this coping mechanism over here. I have this over here. You know what I mean? I've never had that type of power. So if you put me in power and all of a sudden I led people who came after my life to destroy me, I might make their life a little bit hell. all my sudden like, oh, the grace idea was cool, but I've got some better ideas, and you're really gonna hate them. Yeah. I'm gonna put a little asterisk by grace. Yeah, I'm not saying that So I just want to make that clear, is that I'm a human being too, and I've done some dumb things, and I've sought out revenge in my own personal relationships and hurt people too. None of us have our shit together. So I hope that should always go without saying, is that when we talk about people, even heroic ways, Paul had lots of bullshit too. Jesus was not perfect either. So everybody's told us he's perfect, but from what I've read, there's some things I'm like, I don't know, Jesus. I think you may have missed it on that one. Anyhow, I digress again. Just think about this. I'm just asking us not to return the favor when we can. Love each other, recognize one another's humanity, don't other them, and be so connected to yourself and know who you are. If you can work on yourself, this has helped me a lot, knowing who I am, that when others hold opinions of me that aren't right or don't make sense, I don't always even feel a need to correct them, because I'm starting to know who I am, and I can just live my life. So when people make statements, that also helps me. So sometimes I've been in that Greek category where I don't add up and I don't do enough things, but now I've come to the human category in certain relationships in my life, even people who might have power over me. But I've accepted in some ways of who I am and not allowed those things to bother me, and not had to go to war when someone missed me or missed the mark or misjudged me or misdid this. Sometimes I don't worry about it. Other times I say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's get on the phone, or let's, text, or let's have coffee and talk about this. So this is human stuff. So think about it. Check it out, and enjoy the messiness of humanity, and I will continue to, in Revolution, will continue to support those who are humans who are treated less than human, and hopefully continue to try to speak truth to that power. But also to my friends who are in the fight, if I see you going off the rails, people say, why do you give the left such a hard time? Aren't you part of the left? I'm like, yes, I am. And it's because I believe in the left, and because I am not that, because that's the group that's most important to my heart, is why I say stuff, because I don't want to see the left fall into the same stuff that the right fell into. You know what I mean? And I also don't want to scapegoat the right for everything, because that's part of what is easy to do. I want us to be human beings and learn to work out our issues together and make life better for one another and this world a better place. But that comes through a recognition of each other's humanity, So, sometimes people are like, hey, man, straight white male, get in your lane, bro. And I get that, so I back off a lot. But if I see you hurting somebody or see you maybe reacting out of hurt, I may say something, and you can tell me to go to hell or tell me I'm privileged or whatever, and we can work through that. We can have that conversation as well. Those conversations are always open to being had. So anyway, I like the idea that we're all one in Christ Jesus, and I like the idea that Christians are supposed to see. So we should not believe in the death penalty. We should be fighting for people's rights. We should be loving one another. We should be getting rid of barbaric ideals. I think there's a way to do it. And you know what? What I think I'm going to do is I've got 2 messages that I'm actually working on, that I've been working on lately, and one is on Jesus, and I'll do that. But maybe we'll do Galatians, best of Galatians, the Jesus sermon I'm thinking about, and then go back to this verse and really, really pick it apart. Just go Galatians 3:23. This is going to be the day that we just shred it up, and maybe get some folks' input ahead of time, and do something special with that. So I'll think about that. Anyway, thanks for listening today, folks. I know there hasn't been any major hot takes, but that's what you get today. And thanks for listening. And we are going to do Afterglow. Caleb is back there. He looks like a DJ. What do you got, bro?
Turn me up the mix.
K, bro. C, bro.
DJ C Lab. All right. Lots and lots of cool comments coming in. I was having a hard time keeping up with them all, so let's dive in with the beginning.
I'm ready.
Wonderful place to start. All right, so Zoe says, yeah, I want to be transformed by considering, meditating on, and practicing a Jesus life until I think like my ancestor Jesus. I want to know Jesus in my bones. That's beautiful. I agree. Cool. And then, let's see, I'm just read this one by Alexander. While I'm looking for that one, I should want to read this one too real quick by Ray, our friend Ray up there in Belfast. Belfast Ray says,
Belfast.
That's his new nickname. Stoicism has the concept of a sage, which is an ideal we strive towards but don't necessarily achieve. Makes sense. The sage is an inspiration and an aspiration. They can be real or created. Massimo, I'm just going to mess this name up. Massimo Pigliucci actually calls Spider-Man one of his sages in the practice of his Stoic philosophy.
Oh.
I would put Jesus within that context of the sage for my personal practice. And Batman.
Of course,
Yeah,
Batman.
of course.
Come on.
Yeah. Zoe said that's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. That is really beautiful. And that's how I see things a lot too. You know, that's why religion, I say all the time, religion is a practice. Becoming Christ-like is a practice. We're never necessarily going to get there, but we have to keep trying to, and we have to keep making baby steps, like you were saying, Jay, baby steps.
Yeah, and that's what Paul was, the race well run. That's what Paul means
right.
by the race well run, is that it's this long thing. It's not just like
Exactly. I found that comment that I was looking for by Alexander. Alexander said, I think most humans struggle with the conundrum of simultaneously seeking being part of something homogeneous, united, equal, alike, as well as maintaining their uniqueness, personal identity, special, one-of-a-kindness, etc. Which is, and everyone needs to strike that balance, as leaning towards one side or the other can be problematic.
balance is problematic as well. I mean, there's so much. That's why I like philosophy, because it really helps us think these things through.
Mm-hmm. See all the nuances.
Yeah. I mean, you have to really study hard, and it's really tough. I like easy answers, and unfortunately, I think if we want to get any further in this world, we're gonna have to start. We're gonna have to start looking for complicated answers.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree. A little bit of gray. All right, and then Zoe said, reparations are not revenge. Justice is not hateful, or it becomes something else. We must end the cycle of violence.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. And then Greg was kind of reflecting on the verse about, male nor female, Jew nor Gentile, and said, made the comparison, there's neither Republican nor Democrat.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
No, that's true. I mean, that's
right now.
Yeah, no, but that's true.
Yes. Ray, again, chimes in. Says, very good, and surely that has to be the response to the BLM negating statement, all lives matter. Statement, all lives matter. I guess negating the statement, all lives matter. And then Thomas, says, I'm reading the autobiography of King, and the extent to which nonviolence is the most strategic and practical position is what struck me this time.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I've read King stuff and then reading books on nonviolence, and it's staggering. I mean, it's just... Yeah, sorry. I'm impressed with it as well.
Totally.
And I also, you'd mentioned Belfast just a minute ago, and I was just thinking, the Good Friday Agreement and the peace process in Belfast is another thing that it's like... I was thinking about it last night, and it was just like how they came to peace, and it wasn't just that everybody got what they wanted, because nobody got exactly what they wanted, and this is kind of what I love about the Irish, is but it was that everybody also got screwed equally.
Right. That's a good compromise.
And I thought that was just super brilliant. And I'm actually looking for a copy of the Good Friday Agreement that got sent out to people's houses right now.
That'd be so cool.
Because I think we should maybe do a study on the Good Friday Agreement, because I think the country, we need that kind of thing in this country. I think, we may need it. And what they did was amazing and beautiful. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Speaking of Belfast, Ray, he said also that Mandela is a complicated character, like Martin McGuinness in Northern Ireland. Words and statements are sometimes momentary and transient, but the results of the work and practice of the person are probably the better judge of the person. I think so anyway.
Yeah, no, I
totally agree.
I agree with that.
Actions speak louder than words.
But I will say, for some people, for me, for philosophers, their words speak louder than actions.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and there are certain people, like musicians, whose words spark something in me that makes me want to change. So, I don't know. I like words a lot. And sometimes I like, I love actions. Actions are amazing. And I'd like to see more actions. What's funny, though, is if the words are truth, and their actions are not, that doesn't change the fact that the words were truth. It might just say something more about the person, but the words remain true.
That is interesting.
And the true words go on to change someone else's life.
Yeah.
And to affect someone else.
Yeah.
So, so I think it might be better for when we look at a person and go, well, they say this, but they do this, when they're a hypocrite. But we're able to say, but what they said was true, and what they did was shit, or what they said was shit, but what they did was good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the Bible actually covers
that a parable,
that a little bit too.
about those two sons too.
Yeah.
Roberta says, this is going back to earlier talks we had on how to peacefully argue with each other, respecting each other's point of view, but being able to confront the issues, not the people. So confronting the issue, not the people, with passion, clarity, and love.
It's funny. I mean, I remember sitting in a huge group of what some of you guys would say are probably some of the most progressive Christians in America, trying to convince them that LGBTQ rights were as equally as important as all other social justice issues. And these are people of diversity, okay? This wasn't just a group of white guys, This was women and men and people of color. And I remember getting pushed back on so hard. Now, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but what I'm trying to say is that I remember they would even say, like, when I would personalize it, they would say, oh, you can't argue like that. We all know that that's a trick, and that's something you pull. I mean, I've done that in a sermon before. And it's funny how, like now most of those people are all affirming. I don't think it has anything to do with me, to be honest with you. I probably delayed it more than I helped it. But it was, it's interesting to see people change. It's interesting to have really tough conversations. It's really interesting to have tough conversations and they don't go where you want it to go. As a matter of fact, I used to meet with that group for years. And that last time I had that talk where they shut me down so much, and this was actually probably violence on my part, that I left. I just didn't go back because I was like, if they can't accept my LGBTQ brothers and sisters equally as this, then I can't be there. And the thing is the funny thing is, if I said their, I won't, but if I said their names, you would just be like, what? But it's good to have hard conversations.
Yeah, it is.
It's good to disagree well. It's maybe good to be a little bit early to things, and be seen as shit, It's good to lead the way. People are afraid to lead, and I understand because it hurts really bad sometimes to be rejected. But I think it's important, and that's why I keep encouraging folks to do that. Like, well, what if these people deny who I am, or what if they don't agree with me? I'm going to continue to do it because you're the one who's going to change them, and I believe that. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No,
that was I don't know. I think I had a better point that didn't come out of my mouth. That's works in mouth, not working together. Brain and mouth.
So Ray responded to Roberta talking with her comment earlier, talking about confronting the issues and not the people. And Ray said, I got a lesson in this last week. I was way too confrontational with Zoe as a person, rather than dealing with the issue at hand. Took me 24 plus hours before seeing that too. Wow, thanks for being so transparent there, Ray.
Wow, that's cool. It's cool to see the community.
I love it. Love
working shit out.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's this is biblical too. Like having a part of time when the body meets up is all. I think they call it confessing, but like just kind of airing out.
We're having testimony time. Amen.
Testimony.
I mean, honestly too, when you guys share like stuff like that, where you've had struggles and you've had hard time with each other, and you work it out. I mean, honestly, it's like financially this month sucked for Revolution, but like when I hear that, it's like it just makes me alive. It makes me feel like, God, it makes me want to read more books. It makes me want to study more. It makes me want to do this more. I mean, it encourages the living hell out of me to see us doing this as a community, because we are a very diverse group of people. And I don't even think we realize how diverse we are.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks we should be killing each other, and we should be judging each other, and we should be tearing each other down and having really mean arguments. But instead, we're really trying. It might take 24 hours. It might take a month. It might take a year. But it seems like we're really trying to work out our issues. And to me, that is, that's what we're here to do. That's the message. It's like, this is the message. The message is being lived out. Go do something else. You don't have to come to Revolution anymore. You passed.
Right. Yeah.
See you later.
Continuing with that same thread of conversation, Roberta replies, back to Ray and says, that's definitely something I have to work on as well. We are all a work in progress. And then Zoe hops in and says, as we talked to Roberta, as we talked in DMs until we worked it out. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, maybe he's talking about Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked in DMs until we worked it out and heard each other. Neither of us took our feelings on Sunday morning and let them sit. We got together and talked about it. Thank you, Ray. Love that.
That's great.
That is wonderful. Wonderful to see that playing out in real time. Greg said, grace as accepting the messy. Thomas says, we appreciate you, Jay.
Thank you.
Greg says, all are one in Christ. Oh, here's a question for you. How do we accept those who we are not accepting? Oh, okay. How do we accept those who we are not accepting? I guess maybe what's a step towards accepting those who we have a hard time accepting? Maybe. Okay,
yeah,
maybe.
I mean, I guess that's really where we're talking about the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to Dr. King. I think he drew the best roadmap, and he had a lot of great teachers as well. But I think he drove such a good roadmap on how to disagree well, and how to communicate the truth to those folks who he disagreed with. But like I said before, he also knew the importance of I can't make someone love me. A law can't make someone love me,
right?
But it can keep them from hanging me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the important thing. So I think we're going to always have different levels that people disagree with us on. And I just think having good conversations, honestly, I think sometimes taking even setting our own insecurities aside and going in with just like, hey, let's just talk this out. If we can talk it out, and it might have to be us who reaches out to do that. I think it's easy sometimes to love people you disagree with from afar. Yeah. And just say, I love those people. I'm thinking about those people, but I don't hang out with those people because they don't like me and I don't like them. Mm-hmm. But at what point where does the human interaction happen?
Right.
And do we want to create that before there becomes a need that we're going to crash? Like, heck, call somebody on the phone. Can we work this out? Go meet with them. I mean, that's what I always loved about Soul Force. So Soul Force would go to all these places, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're agitators." And they're like, "No, we want to meet with your leadership. We want to have this conversation. We need to have it now." Right. We need to recognize each other as humans and start working on this issue, because you've just made a decision that we think is deadly. So we want to have this conversation. So they would force the conversation. So sometimes I think forcing the conversation. I mean, for me, I'm such an introvert that if you don't like me, I'm just going to take all my toys and go home. But if it's an important relationship, then I'm going to try to work it out. If it's someone I think that needs to hear something, I'm going to try to work it out. Cool. I swear this couch sinks. My headspace just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I forgot to bring your phone books for you to sit on.
Yeah, such a cozy
booster seat.
Cozy couch I have here. If you want to donate a booster seat to Revolution Church.
Oh my Lord. Pastor booster.
It needs to be an adult booster seat.
The Pastor Booster.
Could
available for 2 payments at $29.99. Is your pastor shrinking?
Gold. I want
the
gold.
Pastor Booster. And then Greg just said, back to your response to his question.
Oh.
Thanks. Talk it out. Sometimes laugh it out. Sometimes maybe flip a table.
Yeah.
If they think, if they insult God and others.
Flipping a table can do a whole lot. Honestly, you can get a really good reaction. I remember there was a group of preachers that were meeting together, and so they had asked Larry Flint had become a Christian, and so they originally asked Larry Flint to come speak to this group of pastors. And of course, they all got cold feet right after they did it and canceled it. Well, my dad was on the plane, flying in, on the Hustler plane with Larry Flint, flying in, talking about God and the conversion and all this stuff. And so my dad got there, and they said, "Oh, we've canceled. We're not going to have it." My dad was like, "What the hell?" He's like, "If you guys don't do this, this man probably never come back to church ever again." And he got this. He's like, "This is damn heresy or something." And he flipped the table, and I was like, "Man, that was a badass moment." That was I was like, "Oh yeah, flip the table."
I'm putting that one in my arsenal for real. I'm not going to use it lightly, but
just
before I die,
start picking out tables that you want to flip, and then be like, "Oh, there's this one place I want to invite you to."
Yeah.
Make sure the table's not bolted to the floor, because that's embarrassing.
Yeah. Or maybe go ahead of time and maybe loosen up those bolts even.
If you loosen them up, then it looks like you ripped it out of the ground.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Very intimidating.
Yeah, very intimidating. Serious.
We really digress.
Come up with some pretty darn good ideas, though. Zoe said, "I really like your idea of going back to these verses with folks giving input. You could have conversations with several different folks, and it could become a conversation that you draw inspiration from. Like you could host a bunch of folks in the bar of Knight and Squire."
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Knight and Squire. Do you get the reference?
I do not know what
That's
that is.
amazing.
Well
done.
That was it.
All right, everybody. Well, maybe we will set up a Knight and Squire. I think it's something in a bottle is the name of the bar there. Maybe we'll start a service called that. Time in a Bottle service. And I think that would be really great, to be honest with you. I would like more of that. I mean, I'd honestly, if my folks who don't agree with me wanted to have me on to talk, I would love to do that as well and just have conversations. I think that's a powerful thing.
It is.
All right, folks. Well, thanks so much. This has been great, encouraging to me, and next week is going to be wild. So I look forward to speaking to you on Sunday. Stay safe out there. Love each other. Be compassionate. Think before you type, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Our ministry is supported 100% by listeners like you. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.